Okay, so last week on New Year's Eve, I posted a video online called "The UK is Dying and I Need to Vent." And that video, 10 days later, now has 600,000 views, which for a lot of YouTubers would be a very standard or maybe even disappointing amount of views. But considering I had 130 subscribers at the time, and my most viewed video ever had 16,000 views, you can imagine that this was quite a surprising turn of events for me. Surprising in good and bad ways, which I'm going to chat about today. So first of all, I want to say thank you so much to everyone who commented, and to everyone who, a few people also donated to me on Buy Me a Coffee, which was very, very kind. I had a small overdraft and that's now been paid off, so I really appreciate that. Why do I think it went so viral? Well, because I think I clumsily, but nevertheless somewhat successfully, managed to articulate an underlying disappointment in the way life is turning out in Britain if you're a young person. The dissonance between how we feel our lives are going to turn out and how they have turned out. I think it's that gap where the misery lies, you know? And the idea that if you're entrepreneurial enough, you can get out of it. As we go through life and we try our best to be entrepreneurial in different ways, and we still aren't getting there in life, we're realizing that perhaps to a large extent that is a lie. Obviously people still do very well in life, and that is often a reflection of their hard work and they deserve that, but a lot of people are working very, very hard but still aren't getting where they want to be, or even close to where they want to be. It has huge implications on their personal life, but also on their broader community. And this is not just happening in the UK, it is happening, it seems, at least everywhere in the Western world. But perhaps in a lot more places. Most of my feedback on the video came from the Western world: Canada, Australia, the USA, and Europe. So that's what I feel a bit more confidently talking about. Yeah, by far, the main comment on my video was about immigration. And I hadn't mentioned immigration in my video. So when those comments started coming in, and let's be honest, some of them were quite vile. They were so blunt, they were so hate-filled. Of course, there was a lot of moderate comments about immigration as well, but some really were quite stressful. And when I saw those coming into my video, as someone who'd never even talked about immigration, I did sort of feel very stressed. I was like, oh my goodness, what have I contributed towards? I don't know how I've come to stand for a symbol of why we need less immigration. You know, I had this idea that 2025 would be my year, and yet it felt like 3 days in I'd already, induced race riots. Here's my thought on immigration, and I would really love it if you just listened to this before you formulate an opinion, because it's going to take a few turns, okay? Everyone in life wants what's best for themselves. That's just obvious. We can look at our own lives and know that intuitively. And my pursuit of wanting what's best for myself has led me to emigrate from the UK and immigrate to Hong Kong. So I understand on a very personal level why you might want to immigrate somewhere to improve your life. So because of that, I really don't feel comfortable having a go at someone just because they've emigrated. Because of the bias, clearly, but also just because I've never thought that I've just always understood, of course, if you were given the chance to improve your life, you would take it, whatever route that takes you down. So the first thing I want to say is I don't like blaming immigrants. I don't think it's kind. I don't think it's fair. I also don't think it's accurate. However, and this is the however for why I wanted you to listen to the end, I do think it's fair to criticise a government that talks extensively about how one of their primary goals is they're going to reduce immigration, and yet every year immigration has increased. 1.2 million immigrants came to the UK last year. 500,000 people left. So we are taking in a lot more than people who are leaving. The problem with this is, regardless of whether you really love immigration, is that it's a sign that the government can't follow through on its promises. And if you look at this more broadly, the governments, and I say government, by this I just mean the government for the past 20 years, right? The government hasn't followed through on promises in general. They're very good at identifying what the problems are in our country. They talk about the need for affordable housing. They talk about the need to improve the NHS. They talk about regulating immigration. They talk about mental health. Okay, these are recognised problems, but they come with solutions from the government. The government also talks about how they are going to change these things, and yet they don't. Okay, and that's not just happening in the UK, that's happening everywhere. And I think when we talk about immigration, that's the problem, is that when people vote for something, they don't get it. So people voted for immigration reform and they didn't get it. People voted to live in an environment they could live in and they didn't get it. People voted for a strong NHS and they haven't got it. What's happening? What is happening there? That means governments either are no longer able to follow through on their promises, where's the power gone? Or they just don't feel that their population are smart enough to hold them accountable. And this is where I feel we need to collectivise. It's in having these conversations and having them in a very articulate way that's, so that we scare the politicians with our intelligence. Yeah. So finally, two final things. I don't think this is just about policies, that have led to this. I also think it's about our general relationship with the internet. We've all felt very lonely as we've talked about how we feel that we're going through this situation in Britain. And so many of the comments talked about how I feel glad that someone has articulated this because I felt alone. And yet everyone in the comment section was saying this. This is a sign that we really are so disconnected from the people around us. And why has that happened? Well, COVID was clearly part of it. But I do think that social media has no nasty agenda inherently, but because its agenda is to keep you on it for as long as possible, that has so many nasty outcomes. It's resulted in us always being online, even when we're watching stuff that we either are perplexed by or is making us actively angry. It's making us more, our opinions are more polarised. And we live with this obsession that everyone has it better than us, and we feel like failures. I had to go to the doctors the other day, and I got told, you've got an appointment, come back in 1 hour. I mean, can you imagine that in the UK? So I did. I had to leave and go for a walk. And because I'm fairly new to Hong Kong, I don't have internet data for Hong Kong, so I just went for a walk. I just had to have an hour of my life that was a bit random, where I wasn't distracted by the internet, but I also had no other fixed plan. And it was reflective for me. Just experiencing the world, you know, not experiencing anything hugely remarkable, but really seeing it, and just knowing that this time was set aside for just existing. We don't have that very often, because we account for so much of our time, and the time that we don't account for, we don't just live with ourselves, we live with our phones. And therefore we live with an algorithm that doesn't have our best interests at heart. And this is another thing that we really need to decide on a personal level that we are going to combat, because big businesses are never going to do that for us. Yeah, so what's new? So I now have 10,000 subscribers, which is very cool. I love YouTube. Watching it is a big hobby of mine. So I see people with very tiny channels have a big video very quickly or immediately go back to their original view count, and because of that, I think I have quite a realistic understanding of how this is going to go down. You know, and I'm okay with that, because what I want this channel to be is an interview channel where I interview people of interests, and I have the eventual goal with that you know, if I send these interviews out to enough newspapers, etc., enough bigger YouTube channels, eventually someone will say, yeah, we'd like to hire you. So that is still my plan. And I'm not gonna now change my content on the off chance that I can, you know, capitalize on this any further. That wasn't my intention, but it has been an interesting experience for me. And I would just like to take one more opportunity to say that to all the people who felt that I said something that meant something to them, it's a privilege to be able to feel that you've helped someone. Yeah, I don't get to feel that way very often, so thank you very much. Have a wonderful 2025.